I'm Petty Benitez Johannot, founding curator and archivist of the MiraNila Heritage House and Library, and the faculty member of UP Diliman's Department of Art Studies. I was also editor and primary author of The Life and Art of David Cortez Medalla, a book published by Vibal Foundation in 2012. In today's episode of Cultural Cache Online, I'll speak about Medalla's 1956 painting at the Cultural Center of the Philippines 21 AM collection, titled Portrait of Fernando Zobel or Don Orencio de Avila. I first saw it hanging at the end of the vestibule as I exited the CCP Art Museum office. This was in the 1970s when CCP gave much attention to artworks as carriers of ideas rather than as likenesses. This portrait was a fine example of the former. Medalla's early portraits celebrated people he admired. Don Orencio was certainly one of them. Portrayed in full figure, standing with hands on the hips, feet apart and directly facing the viewer, Orencio's eyes are wide open and his smile is broad. Outlined in black and enlivened with white along the borders, Orencio appears electrified, even glowing. Colorful biomorphic forms, ideograms, and letters that spell out his name fill in the figure. The dominant interior color is black, the exterior mustard yellow. Now, I consider this portrait successful for its vigorous lines, profusion of colors, and vibrancy of forms and textures that come together to express exuberance, a mood that doubtless Medalla, who signed these works Gabriel, had in his mind to communicate. This piece is one of three 1956 works by Medalla in the CCP collection of the same size and medium, each one titled Portrait of Fernando Zobel. Its provenance was the Museum of Philippine Art, where I was a curator. For Medalla's first solo exhibition in 1957, the only seeming links between these portraits and their subjects were the titles that Medalla had given them: Portrait of Fernando Zobel and My Sister Being Kutay at the Sewing Machine of 1956 at the Ateneo Art Gallery, among others. His other works that year showed layers of impasto which gave them depth and intensity and allowed colors to stand out and shadows to form naturally. Similar to the 1940s single figures of Jean de Buffet and Jean Fautrier of the School of Paris, Medalla mixed oil with what may have seemed as seashells, sand, and gravel. More than the subject's likenesses, he seemed interested in the materiality of paint and the vitality of colors. Some of Medalla's thickly impastoed canvases served as backdrops for his highly publicized poetry readings at the studio called Le Cave d'Angely in September of 1957. Highlights from this series include Medalla's self-portrait in the National Museum from 1957 and The Joyous Kingdom 1956 that Fernando Zobel purchased and donated to the Ateneo Art Gallery, along with his Philippine art collection in 1957. So while Medalla was not without detractors, writer Joan Edades described his primitive and brazen style as a milestone in Philippine art. Poet Jose Garcia Villa, with whom Medalla became close in New York, hailed him as the best painter in the Philippines today. In 1959, Medalla left to live in London and the continent. In his last 2 decades, he enjoyed fame as an icon of kinetic, participatory, and proto-performance art. His works were included in important exhibitions, catalogs, and art fairs. His pieces entered major museums like the Tate Modern and the Hayward Gallery in London, like the National Gallery of Art in Singapore and the New Museum, the Guggenheim, and the Whitney in New York. Notwithstanding visa restrictions on Philippine passports, Medalla identified as Filipino and kept his travel documents updated. He worked on a number of paintings and performances that paid homage to places in which he lived and friendships he had forged. He lovingly archived old photos of family and friends in the Philippines. As he was gifted with good memory, he could vividly describe his early days in UP Diliman, his newspaper offices in Manila, and his Cave d'Angeli and Blue Bamboo studios in Ermita and Pasay. So while Medalla lived over 7 decades away from his homeland, the Philippines seemed never to have left him. In reflection, his collaborator and partner of 30 years, Adam Nancurvis, described Medalla as a citizen of the world, and I quote, "New York was his spiritual home, London his formulation, Berlin was his hearth, and Manila his heart." His last 2 years saw Medalla back in the Philippines. Even confined to a wheelchair, his performances continued to confound and resonate with audiences who came as curious spectators but ended as artistic collaborators. In Currency, an online magazine of August 2011, Medalla summed up his creative impulses, and I quote, "I believe our capacity to generate inspired moments or to be inspired by the moment contracts and expands with our ability to love and to our individual luck to be loved or unloved. By opening my mind to the random and chance events of existence, I have avoided, in the practice of my art, the cul-de-sac of formalism." Close quote. Medalla never stopped painting, though. His last works, now at the Ateneo Art Gallery, were large-scale sand and oil renderings of people. A circuitous journey back to textured surfaces and an irrepressible delight in recalling these treasured links to the Philippines. Thank you for joining me in this episode of Cultural Cash Online.